Welcome to the Closing the Trust Gap podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to visit with leaders from a wide variety of vocations and industries who are unafraid to have honest conversations about how organizations can become more trustworthy. My name is Corey Shear, and I'm the founder and CEO of Trust-Centric Consulting and the author of the book titled Closing the Trust Gap. I truly hope that this conversation is helpful and will inspire you to take action on strengthening trust. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Closing the Trust Gap podcast. I am so honored to be joined by Michael Haynes, a friend of mine who we've not known each other for very long, but Michael is one of those individuals. He is so engaging. He's such a connector, and he has so many amazing things to say that it feels like I've known Michael for many, many years. And the cool part also is that Michael lives down under. So, Michael, you're in Australia right now. I want to welcome you to the show. But before we get started, what time is it? It's 3:40 in Kansas City, but what time is it in Australia?
So it is 8:40 a.m. on a sunny Saturday morning in the city of Sydney.
So you're out ahead of me. You are there tomorrow. You have traveled ahead of my time, and I can't wait to catch up. But very, very cool. And the other thing is you have been my first international book buyer. You bought it via Kindle in Australia, and it's so great to connect with you, Michael. We've got a lot to talk about. We've already had many great conversations, but if you could just let our guests, our audience rather, know who you are and specifically what is the work that you do every day.
Great. Thanks, Corey. So my name is Michael Haynes, and I am a business growth go-to-market specialist for small and medium B2B professional service firms. So the likes of your accounting firms, IT firms, technology companies, law firms, project management firms.
And you've not done this work for your entire career. You've been a part of some major corporations as well. Maybe share with us a little bit about what is it that really inspired you or prompted you to move into more of the work that you're doing currently?
Sure, Corey. So prior to setting up my own consulting firm, I worked, in big corporate, working across various roles in customer strategy, market research, business strategy, and marketing. Often sitting in a very much hybrid role in terms of working with companies on how they bring those insights, those understanding of industries, markets, and customers, and translating those into both strategies and action plans in terms of programs, initiatives to help build and grow businesses. I was working in big corporate for quite a number of years. Been here in Australia since 2000. And in 2010, after my last corporate role, heading up customer research and strategy for one of the large telco organizations, I decided it's time to go out on my own and start working with my people, being small and medium business owners, because I do come from a family with a lot of entrepreneurs. And I just felt it was time to really take my skills and start working with my people.
That's great. What's been your favorite part of that move to that new work?
What I love about working with small, medium businesses, well, there's a couple of things. One, they're very much action takers and doers. I learned a lot in big corporate, but a lot of the work I did has and probably still is sitting on the shelves of senior execs in marketing, finance, and strategy, and they just kind of sits there and collecting dust. Whereas small and medium business owners, those strategy plans are short and sharp, and we spend a lot of time on the actions and implementation. And that's what I love doing, is really making sure we're getting some impact in the organization, that we're actually doing things, as opposed to just going through planning cycle upon planning cycle, versions 57, 75 of the strategy document. And I kid you not, there are some organizations where in the one planning cycle, we were up to, almost, 80 plus versions of this mammoth document, which no one was reading. So just to be really having some impact and helping small, medium businesses really move forward. It's quite rewarding. It's lots of fun. And I've learned a lot. I met some amazing people as well.
I bet you have. And you've read my book. You
Yes, I have.
have given me incredible feedback. You are somebody who you just have told me, you're like, every professional services company, they need to read this book. They need to be all about trust. And I would love to hear, what was it specifically about the book that really resonated with you, that you feel needs to be just implemented within professional services and the work that you do?
Well, Corey, I'll be honest with you. From the time I saw the title Closing the Trust Gap, I thought, this book I think is going to be quite necessary, I think, potentially for professional services. So right from the get-go with the title,
Mm,
I very much try to practice what I preach and really keeping a pulse of what's going on in the market and what's going on within professional services. The latest research has shown across from
mhm,
various organizations, and this is across industries globally, that the number one thing that our clients, our prospects are looking for is expertise, depth of expertise. So you've got to
yeah,
have that expertise to be able to build that trust, and the trust is integral to maintaining and growing the relationship. So
mm,
saw the title of your book, came across you on a LinkedIn post, started reading your book, and the content that you have, the principles, the notion of the structure of trust,
mm.
competencies, all those things you talk about. This is mandatory, necessary for us. Anyone working in professional services, whether you're an accountant, whether you're an IT firm, managed service provider, project management consultant, those who are doing recruitment consulting, human resource, all of us in the professional services realm, where we're
Mm.
providing that strategic advice, and we are a big ticket purchase that's integral to the livelihood of the business and those key stakeholders. All of us need to be reading and adopting and applying what you have put in this book.
Thank you so much. And I am encouraged every time I talk to you, because this is why I do what I do. This is why I spend the time with clients. And even today, I was with a group of individuals, and I did a 3-hour workshop with them. And one of the things that really resonated with them was, we so often we want loyalty for our customers, for our end users, and we believe that we need to increase the value proposition, of course. So we need to bring value, whatever they're spending money on. We've got to provide value so that it's worth it to them, so that they take action on the worth of something. But it's amazing to me when I connect with individuals or I lead workshops, this whole idea or a concept of a trust proposition, where instead of the starting point being the value proposition, actually where we need to start is really with strengthening trust. And for you, I'm sure that you have been amazed at even moving from a very large corporate context into something where you're now much more relational, you're much more nimble in the work that you get to do. I bet you see there's tons of opportunities to strengthen trust with your clients, as well as encourage them to strengthen trust with their clients. And that it's probably like bringing clean water to some of these organizations for the first time that they've ever had it. Like, tell us a little bit more about the transformation that you see in companies that really lock into and understand why trust is so foundational to their work.
Yes, it's quite those organizations. I'm going to talk in the context of professional service firms. So those
Mhm,
professional service firms that really understand the importance of trust, operating with what I call the HIT principle: honesty, integrity, transparency, and really demonstrate that expertise and really deliver value. Honest, feedback, and really operate in a trust-centric way. They build and grow very strong relationships with those key buyers, those stakeholders within those organizations. And that's part of the key to success for us in professional services, because when professional service firm leaders, when they have that trust in you, it just means it's going to be lots of opportunities for you,
yes.
for your organization to do more work within that organization. They will refer you more. Even when they leave and they go on to other ventures, other organizations, they will take you with them, because it is so hard. There's so many. Professional services is very saturated. There's lots of us that are giving strategic advice, and some are very good, some are not so great, some are very confident, some operate in terms of their empathy, and the way they operate can vary. And so professional service clients are very, very keen on, they need that competency, they need that problem solving, but they
Mhm.
want to have those who care for them, who they can trust and rely on. And that can be hard to come by, but and professional service clients, once they get it, they will stick to you, because they're like, you get me, I can trust you. You're going to tell me, in terms of, let's say, if we're talking, let's say technology, solution X versus package Y, and you might say, when you're honest, you're going to tell me, this is the one to go with. It's going to be better for you, even though I could make more margin on the other one. This is the one to go with. They like that. They appreciate that kind of honest feedback, and that
Mm.
it built that trust, and it just leads to long relationships, more opportunities, and it's a win-win for everyone.
And Michael, why, in your experience, why do you feel like trust is something that has been neglected by so many companies?
I think it's because the pursuit of, pursuit of the almighty dollar, the KPIs, we've got
Mhm.
to hit those, profit numbers, those revenue numbers. Stakeholders have those commercial KPIs, and then they have their own agendas as well, building their own brand, getting their promotion. And often folks will do what is necessary to, make sure that they kind of CYA, cover their ass, part of my
Mhm.
expression.
Mhm.
And that can lead to some behaviors which are not so great, where there's, internal teams, leaders throwing each other under the bus. I've seen that in a few corporate settings when I've been brought in to work on some consulting projects into larger organizations. And I've seen senior leaders throw each other under the bus because there's the big promotion. There's going to be an opening in the C suite. I want an opportunity to get in the C suite, and I've seen some of those bad behaviors, and that leads to a breakdown in trust, which filters down into the
Mhm.
teams. Because I was working on across two strategy teams, marketing and the corporate strategy team, and how that kind of bad behavior at the top can lead to mistrust and a lot of bad sentiment within the teams who have to be doing the work and who are often the ones that are called upon, to explain justifications or strategies, etc. So, yeah, it all can really go together. But those agendas
Yeah.
of corporate adhering to those objectives, corporate as well
Mhm.
as personal, that can start to lead to bad behaviors, which can start to erode trust and lead to bad sentiment, which will lead to bad performance and outcomes as well.
Yeah, the win at all cost. It's the profit. There's a quote in my book. I talk about how pawns are expendable when profit is king,
Mhm.
right? And if it's there's a pawn mentality and people are expendable because the profit is what's king, then that's going to throttle people. I also talk about in my book where I was meeting with a prospect and they admitted that they've got some gaps in trust. They can sense it. They know that there's something going on. It's not optimal. The reason why they're not reaching their KPIs like they think that they should be is because there is a breakdown of trust. And then to introduce the notion of, have you ever considered trust as a standalone KPI? And it's like, well, how do you do that? Well, we can measure trust. It's something that we can do. And so then I asked them, I said, well, do you want to measure the current level of workplace trust that you have? And they said, honestly, we're making too much money right now to really worry about that. And it's just like that right there clarifies that it's not a priority. And if it's not a priority, if you have to wait until it's a chaotic situation or a crisis or complete toxicity, or you have a group of individuals within the company that are key influencers and culture makers that they leave the organization, now all of a sudden you're in crisis mode, and unfortunately that's probably just too late to really build trust in a meaningful way. But you and I both know that if you are committed to, and even just starting with that first building block, which I know you do a deep dive as it relates to competencies within professional services, and you break down those competencies into a lot of different things. Can you share, if you were consulting me as a professional service provider, what are some of the really vital critical competencies that I would need to have in order to provide the best service?
So my company is called Listen, Innovate, Grow, and listening is the first and number one key thing that we as professional service firms have to be doing. And listening needs to be done on three levels. Listening to you as the CEO, the founder. What are your goals? What are your strengths? Where are you looking to take the company? Understanding those strengths and those weaknesses. I think that is very critical and important, because that's going to help you know the right kinds of opportunities to go after. Listening to the market. So really having that depth of understanding of the trends, developments, the performance, what your competitors are doing. Having that strong understanding at that industry, vertical slash geographic level is very important, again, for our clients, because our clients want depth of expertise. So they want to know that, the technology firm that's working in a specific industry vertical, that the consultants have that depth of expertise within that industry context and for those geographic markets in which they're operating. So listening to the market, having that depth of understanding through research and really be tapped in is important. Then the third level is listening to the customers. But for us in B2B, for us in services, it's about understanding the buyers. So who are the buyers? And there are three core things that we need to understand in terms of listening to the buyer. We need to know who buys, i.e. who makes the decision and influences the decision, what are their priorities, and how they buy. So it's those three questions that we must have an understanding on that customer, i.e. buyer level, because that is going to be also critical for how we do our go-to-market to attract, acquire, retain clients. Having that industry, that listening to the market will help us have that depth of expertise so we can give the right advice, insights, and recommendations, what I call AIR, to our clients, because that is what our clients are seeking. They want expertise, and we deliver expertise through AIR, advice, insights, and recommendations, Corey. What are the best opportunities? What are the best practices? What are kinds of solutions to meet our objective to solve problems? With whom should we be working with? What are the latest trends of what are going on in the industries and markets we currently serve and seek to serve? So listening is a very core competency that we need to have in terms of that understanding. And that's what I'm calling from a technical perspective. But Corey, in your book, you talk about listening from a non-technical perspective in terms of that active listening with your stakeholders. And that is very important. You need to be active listening when you're having that kickoff meeting and those discovery sessions, and really tuning in what's happening in that kickoff meeting, in that session, and watching the verbal cues and nonverbal cues. Because if someone's a little bit off, it's like, okay, is there something wrong here? Are we not all on the same page with in terms of what we're going to be doing with this business strategy that we're looking to develop to enter new markets? And if the VP of finance is kind of looking one way and the head of marketing is kind of, okay, we've got to be in tune with that. Is there some misalignment? Do we need to make sure, help to get everyone on the same page? So there's that active listening with our clients, but also internally as well as professional service providers. We need to be making sure we're listening to each other, we're on the same page, that we don't have leaders who are trying to do anything at all costs to win the client, to win the business, not recognizing issues around capabilities and competencies. And trying to take shortcuts to just, win the contract. So that active listening, which is a non-technical, is very important as well. So you need to be doing the strategic kind of listening at that industry, market, customer, client level, very critical. But we also have to make sure we're doing that active listening as well, internally and within our own teams.
And I love how you broke that down in terms of, and I wrote some notes, and we'll also have the high level in the show notes. My podcast producer does the show notes and the roll up. It's so cool because we're able to get people directed right into something that they could specifically look at that's helpful. But you talked about the critical elements of technical listening and listening to ourselves, listening to the market, listening to the customer. Those three things. And then for you specifically in professional services, your customer is the buyer, right? So the buyer, then it's the who, the what, and the how. And then also that model of AIR, that's really, really good. I've never heard of that, where you talked about you're listening for, or you're providing advice, you're providing insight, and you're providing recommendation. And you are doing that after you have done the listening. You're not coming in, you're not starting with the AIR. That is the latter part of the work that you do.
You have to, listening is the most important critical element. And it is the element that all companies, I've worked with everything from micro businesses right through to large corporate, and listening, there's always massive gaps in the listening. Typically, I find there's gaps in terms of that listening at that market and that customer level, that there's not enough depth of understanding. And you must have that depth of understanding on both of those levels. And for us in professional services, it is critical because, again, expertise and depth of expertise is what our clients, you're working with, like, again, whether you're an accounting firm, law firm, project management firm, what have you, our clients are looking for that they're looking for experts, the strategic advisors, the experts. So we have to have that depth. So you can only gain that if you have a strong understanding of the industries and markets you serve, and the clients that you serve. You have that depth. Then you know where to focus. You will know what are the priorities for which you need to provide advice, insights, and recommendations.
Would you, I've noticed this. What are your thoughts on this statement that a lack of focus is the fruit of distrust? So a lack of focus on what matters most is a fruit of distrust.
Absolutely. I fully agree. When there is a lack of focus, there's lack of clarity. It leads to distrust because you can start operating all over the place, this kind of scattered gun approach.
Mm,
It can lead to a lot of unnecessary work, unnecessary pressures. People are going off in different tangents that can create tension and disagreement because there'll be those that'll be switched on, recognizing why are we doing A, B,
mhm.
C, D, E, and F when we only need to be doing E and F.
Yeah.
And they'll try to raise their hand to say we should only be doing E and F, and that senior leader, for example, is like, no, you're doing all of it. So absolutely, when there's lack of focus, lack of clarity, that does lead to distrust. And often lack of focus, lack of clarity comes from a lack of listening from that technical level on listening on those three levels, listening to you, listening to the market, listening to your client. It's that lack of listening that leads to that lack of focus.
Do you find that so much of the work that you do is about helping refocus, about creating a disciplined approach, a deeper permission to give people the opportunity to understand their business more deeply? You help facilitate that process by which you can say we get to go deeper. It is not a burden. It is actually vital that we do this. If we don't go deeper, we will not be fully maximizing our potential. Is that a core element of the work that you do, as
Yeah.
giving
So
people permission to go
fundamentally,
deep?
yeah. So fundamentally, Corey, I help provide clarity on where to focus. So based on doing that listening on those three levels, and I make sure that we have a fair amount of depth of understanding across those three levels. I help clients understand where to focus. So what industries, what geographic markets, what kinds of organizations we should be focusing on, and who are the buyers, the decision makers, those making the decision and those influencing the decision that we have to be working with, and who they are, what are their priorities, and how they buy. Because when you have clarity around where to focus, what industries, what markets, what clients, and the kinds of buyers, it will make it very clear as to the strategy and roadmap that we have to move forward to acquire those clients, as well as to retain and help grow those clients and do more with them, all of which will be grounded in air, providing them with advice, insights, and recommendations.
Yeah, I love that. And kind of coming full circle, when I think about the definition of trust, trust is the firm belief in the truth of something. When you are able to listen and understand the self, the market, the customer, the buyer, when you are able to articulate the who, the what, and the how, and when you're able to extend advice, insight, and recommendation based on that, what you are now doing is you are providing the truth of that organization, the truth of the opportunity. And when everybody can believe in that and they can clearly see it, that's when you build trust. It's literally living out the definition of the firm belief in the truth of something. And you're a truth seeker when it comes to helping your clients understand this. And you do that through appreciative inquiry and asking questions, but also being very, very laser focused on a disciplined process. And you see time and time again, I'm sure that there is just, when you open the eyes of clients to that, they probably just see opportunity everywhere.
Yes, I thought when I take clients through this process, yeah, the light does tend to come on. Okay, it's very clear now what we need to be doing. That roadmap of how to move forward becomes very clear, and because it is grounded in, listening in a very robust, structured, market-driven, client-driven, buyer-driven process. There's that focus, there's that clarity. So you get that confidence, you get that trust. I'm
Mhm.
able to convey that because I'm working with them and helping to show them this
This
is
is the
where
way.
things are for us.
Yeah.
And so they get it. It's like, this makes sense because it's based on data, it's based on insights, it's based on what is happening in those industries and those markets and those clients they're currently serving and those seeking to serve. And then the roadmap becomes very clear. They get clarity, they get focus, they get confidence, they have the trust. And then they're like, okay, Michael, what's the roadmap? What's the plan to move forward? What are the things we're going to start to do first? And then can proceed to work with them, not just on the strategy, but also on the action and an implementation to actually take things forward.
I love that. And that moment where you allow them to have that breakthrough experience where they finally can move forward and there's no more making excuses. There's no more frantic scurrying on things that are not actually what matters. And people can really authentically get focused on what matters most. That's amazing. And then the results, of course, are going to be improved KPIs across the board, including with your people internally as well as your customers externally. And that's when you start seeing businesses and companies begin to flourish. So, all that to say, I want to make sure that if there's somebody that wants to connect with you and consider working with you or learning more about what that looks like, I would love for them to be able to connect with you. What is the best way for them to do that, Michael?
So there are two places. One, they connect with me on LinkedIn because I'm very active and always on LinkedIn. And then secondly, they can go to my website, listeninnovategrow.com. So that's listeninnovategrow, all one word.com. And there, it's a repository for all tools, resources, articles, insights on how to be, buyer driven in a B2B context for us
Mm.
as professional service firms that are looking to acquire, retain, and grow our clients and have the impact and lives that we seek. That's my ethos. That's my mission.
I love it. Michael, I am so grateful that we crossed paths on LinkedIn. I'm so honored that you would buy my book all the way from down under. And it has been an incredible 26 minutes. It's gone by too fast. We'll have to do this again for sure. And I look forward to continuing to collaborate with you as we help leaders and teams and organizations strengthen trust and close that trust gap. And when we do, that's when great things really begin to happen. So, Michael, thank you for your time. Appreciate all that you do. And I want to encourage all of our listeners, connect with Michael on LinkedIn, reach out to him if you have an interest in learning more about how he might be able to help your organization. And with that, we'll call it another episode. And thank you again, Michael, for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great discussion.
You bet.